Ashwapati's wife is also a mother, and her mother's antennas are very sensitive. And so, as soon as she is told that this day returning Satyavan must die, she loses no time. Although the poet says, a lightning bright and nude, this sentence fell. The sentence fell like lightning. That had the effect of a lightning on these people. But the queen cried, vain then can be heaven's grace. Heaven mocks us with the brilliance of its gifts. For death is a cupbearer of the wine, of too brief joy held up to mortal lips for a passionate moment by the careless gods. Satyavan may be a wine of the rarest vintage. You may not be able to find any other cup holding wine of such rare vintage. But what's the use? Because of too brief joy held up to mortal lips. But I reject the grace and the mockery. Heaven seems to mock at us by sending someone like Satyavan, and then the minute he meets someone like Savitri, life's fulfillment, immediately behind it is the shadow, death. And therefore she says, I reject the grace and the mockery. And then turns to Savitri and says, mounting thy car, go forth, O Savitri, and travel once more to the peopled lands. Alas, in the green gladness of the woods, thy heart has stooped to a misleading call. Choose once again and leave this fated head. Death is the gardener of this wonder tree. Love's sweetness sleeps in his pale marble hand, advancing in a hurried line but closed. A little joy would buy too bitter an end. Plead not thy choice. She knows what Savitri is going to say. Savitri is going to say, I have made my choice. Plead not thy choice, for death has made it vain. Thy youth and radiance were not born to lie, a casket void dropped on a careless soil. A choice less rare may call a happier fate. Go once again. This time you may not come across someone like Satyavan, but a choice less rare may call a happier fate. Just as Ashwapati's wife has listened to Narad, and this is her reaction, Savitri has also heard Narad's prediction, and her reaction comes in the next passage. But Savitri answered from her violent heart. Her voice was calm, her face was fixed like steel. To steel her will, that was why Narad had said what he had said, and that seems to have gone home, and that seems to have achieved its purpose, because you find every word and syllable of what Savitri now says is rock-like in its determination. Once my heart chose, and chooses not again. The word I have spoken can never be erased. It is written in the record book of God, the truth once uttered from the earth's air effaced, by mind forgotten, sounds immortally forever in the memory of time. Once the dice fall thrown by the hand, fate, in an eternal moment of the gods, my heart has sealed its troth to Satyavan. Its signature adverse fate cannot efface. Its seal not fate, nor death, nor time dissolve. The seal of my soul's determination cannot be dissolved either by fate or by time. or by death. Those who shall part, who have grown one being within. Who shall part them? At best, our bodies can be parted. But we have become one within. Those who shall part, who have grown one being within. Death's grip can break our bodies, not our souls. If death take him, I too know how to die. Let fate do with me what she will or can. I am stronger than death and greater than my fate. My love shall outlast the world. Doom falls from me, helpless against my immortality. Fate's law may change, but not my spirit's will. The interesting thing is, this Savitri has not yet started her yoga, has not yet discovered the great strength that she has within her, has not yet found out for herself who she really is. She's a young girl. How does she know all this? Where does she get the strength to say what she says? This is not just a human response. This is a superhuman response. What gave her this strength? From where did she draw this power? And you'll find this is a sudden jump, as it were, of her being, which becomes possible because she had really found her love. In that moment, when Savitri finds her love, a great yoga has already been performed in her being. She may not be conscious of it. That comes later on. It is this elementary strength that she has of having discovered the love, and she knows, she feels it is so true that everything else compared to this is an illusion, is a falsity, and she feels convinced that she can somehow vanquish everything that comes against it. And that is why, even before she discovers herself, all this is going to come in Book 7, Savitri's Yoga, but she is not yet in the generally accepted sense a yogi, and yet her first stage of her yoga was completed when she found Satyavan. And that strength, that elemental strength, makes her say this and says, my love shall outlast the world, doom falls from me, helpless against my immortality. Fate's law may change, but not my spirit's will. Well, we can talk about this little drama. Savitri's mother goes back once again and tries to dissuade her in stronger words. Oh child, she says, same page, a few lines down from where we left. O child, in the magnificence of thy soul, dwelling on the border of a greater world, and dazzled by the superhuman thoughts, thou lendst eternity to a mortal hope. Here on this mutable and ignorant earth, who is the lover and who is the friend? Savitri's mother suddenly becomes a pragmatist. Mother has to be several things for the sake of the daughter. She says, what is this you are talking about love? Who is the lover and who is friend? There is no such eternally defined notions like love. You must see what the reality is and make pragmatic compromises with it. So Savitri's mother suddenly becomes a great pragmatist. All passes here and nothing remains the same. None is for any on this transient globe. It's all a convenience. You like somebody, friend, whatever, as long as it's convenient, you keep calling him a friend. When it is inconvenient, you still have to go your way, he has his way to go. Nobody is for anyone else on this globe, Savitri. Why are you living under this illusion? which also shows Savitri's mother getting desperate. This is not Savitri's mother's usual stand. She is a consort of no less a person than Ashwapati. But there is something that triggers this reaction in her. She's become totally desperate and she wants to do everything possible. And see that Savitri is dissuaded from pursuing this suicidal project of hers, getting married to Satyavan. And therefore he says, none is for anyone, any on this transient globe. He whom thou lovest now, a stranger came, and into a far strangeness shall depart. Who was Satyavan until you met him? As a stranger. And someday he will once again be a stranger. Is your life worth throwing away for something as transient as love? Later on you will see the god of death also uses some of these arguments. And you will very often see the so-called human concern that we have, our human way of doing things, for human sentiments, human emotions, human concerns. This also seems to be in league with the negation for which death stands. So all this sentimentality which is flaunted as concern, as love, Savitri's mother, when she's, again after Savitri's words, you can't say that Savitri's mother's concern is false or wrong, because who has ever conquered death? You can say, as a kind of rhetorical turn of speech, I shall defy death, I shall defy fate. Who has done it? So you can't blame Savitri's mother. Even her own mother can't believe that Savitri means what she says. She says this is a youthful kind of exuberance that says, come what may, I have fallen in love and this will be accomplished. And so she says, he whom thou lovest now, a stranger came, and into a far strangeness shall depart. His moments part once done upon life's stage, which for a time was given him from within, to other scenes he moves and other players. Once your allotted period of days or years is exhausted, you leave this earthly scene, you go away, come back, reborn, next time, a different wife, a different father, a different mother. Do you think these relationships are permanent? They're temporary relationships. And to other scenes he moves and other players, and laughs and weeps mid faces new, unknown. The body thou hast loved is cast away amidst the brute unchanging stuff of worlds to indifferent mighty nature, and becomes crude matter for the joy of other lives. Well, we have a lot more ground to cover, so I don't think I can dwell on this much longer, but I just wanted to draw our attention to this as we have been doing. And Savitri listens to all this, and finally, this is what she says. And if you hear anybody saying this, you will give up all attempts of trying to dissuade that person. This is what Savitri says on page 435, middle of that page. This is first, last joy, and to its throb the riches of 1,000 fortunate years are poverty. Nothing to me are death and grief, or ordinary lives and happy days. And what to me are common souls of men, or eyes and lips that are not Satyavans? I know every human being has eyes, every human being has lips, but they have no meaning for me if they are not Satyavans' eyes and Satyavans' lips. And what to me are common souls of men, or eyes and lips that are not Satyavans? I have no need to draw back from his arms and the discovered paradise of his love. and journey into a still infinity. Only now for my soul in Satyavan I treasure the rich occasion of my birth. In sunlight and a dream of emerald ways, I shall walk with him like gods in paradise. If for a year, that year is all my life, and yet I know this is not all my fate, only to live and love a while and die. For I know now why my spirit came on earth, and who I am, and who he is I love. And then the last concluding 3 lines clinch the issue. There is nothing more even Savitri's mother could have said after this. I have looked at him from my immortal self. I have seen God smile at me in Satyavan. I have seen the eternal in a human face. That's it. I have looked at him from my immortal self. I have seen God smile at me in Satyavan. I have seen the eternal in a human face. And the poet himself says, then none could answer to her words. Can't say anything more after this. Silent they sat and looked into the eyes of fate. Well, then comes the second canto of this book, which, as I said earlier on, is incredibly rich, although it's only about 24, 25 pages long. It takes up some very, very important questions, the questions like the ones that Savitri's mother asks. Savitri's mother, when she finds, now this is totally Sri Aurobindo's own, there is nothing comparable to this in Vyasa's Savitri story in the Mahabharata. So this episode, the conversation between Malavi, Savitri's mother, and the god of death is totally new. This is not from the original Mahabharata story. And the question that Savitri's mother raises is the fundamental basic question of all lives and of all philosophy. Most philosophies flounder on this question. Until you come to this question, you can somehow survive. But when you face this question, then you suddenly realize that you need more than similar, just system building. And what is that question? This is not only a question in philosophy, it's also a question in every individual's life. Every individual who is awake, who is living a full-blooded life, not an inconscient life, an animal life in a human body, but a conscious life, asks this question of himself at some point or the other. What is that question? This is the question Savitri's mother asks on page 437, almost the last 3 lines. O seer, in the earth's strange twi-natured life, by what pitiless adverse necessity, or what cold freak of a creator's will, by what random accident or governed chance that shaped a rule out of fortuitous steps, made destiny from an hour's emotion came into the unreadable mystery of time, the direr mystery of grief and pain. What was the need for grief and pain in this world? Is it thy God who made this cruel law? God created this world. He must also have created pain and evil that you find in this world. Why was this created? Very often we tell ourselves, if God only had consulted me how to create this world, I would have given him some useful tips. He would not have ended up creating this horrid thing that he has created here. Could have consulted people like me, a little knowledgeable about this world. In one of his letters somewhere, Sri Aurobindo says, yes, God was looking for you when he was creating this world, or going to ask you what kind of world to create, but you were not to be found anywhere. If you were found anywhere, probably he would have asked you. This is the basic question, isn't it? God is supposed to be perfect. God is supposed to be Sat, Chit and Ananda. God is supposed to have created this world out of his joy, out of his great bliss. But such a terrific world, ignorance, death, misery. Why did God create this world? Well, it has two aspects. One is the aspect of pain, the other is the aspect of evil. Pain and evil are not always the same. As you can see, there is pain in the animal world, but there is no notion of evil in the animal world. Evil comes with the advent of the human mind. Only when the mind comes, you have the notion of good and evil, morality, not moral, all these things. So evil is a more complex notion than pain. How did this come? How did God allow this to come? Well, there is a classic statement of this problem, as many of you probably know, who are more versed in philosophy than I could ever be, stated by the British philosopher Hume. He says, if you look at the world, it is very difficult to believe that the maker of this world is all compassionate, all merciful, all kind, and all powerful at the same time. Why is that so? Because it's a patent fact of this world that there is so much pain here, so much suffering here. And yet, God has allowed this world to go on as it has always been. So from this, you can draw either of these conclusions. Either God doesn't care, he knows there is pain and suffering in this world, but he doesn't care, or he cares, but he can't do anything about it. What is the point? I also care a lot. What can I do? Nothing that I can do, so I turn my face away from all suffering and evil and pretend that it doesn't exist. So if this is true, then you can either say God is not all caring, all merciful, all compassionate, or you can say he is all compassionate, all merciful, but he can't do anything about it. So he is not omnipotent. He is not the Sarva Shaktiman that we like to describe him as. So he either this or that. Well, this is the basic problem, and if you read philosophy, which is not a necessarily good enterprise, there are philosophies and philosophies one could go on reading, you will find 3 or 4 standard answers given to this question. The question is, how did all merciful, all compassionate God, who is supposed to be the very definition of perfection, how could he have created this imperfect world? This world of pain and suffering. As I said, there are 3 or 4 answers one could give. One is, as a lawyer in a court of law, you try to say, my Lord, I would like the question to be reframed so that we all know what we are talking about. What is the question? The question is, how could a perfect God have created such an imperfect world? Well, the answer is, there is no God. So the question how a perfect God created an imperfect world doesn't arise. This whole world is a brute mechanic accident. It's a brute machine. There is no God. It doesn't solve the problem of evil, but it at least answers this question, how could a God create this world? What is the answer? There is no God, so the question doesn't arise. The case dismissed. There is another answer one could give to this question. What is that answer? Once again the same. I would like the jury and everybody to note the question. What is the question? The question is, how could a perfect God have created such an imperfect world? The answer? Where is the imperfect world? I don't see the imperfect world. Oh, what about all the pain and suffering? Oh, that's all a mithya, that's all a maya, that's all an illusion. All that exists in this world is Brahman, the sole reality. Everything else is mithya. The people who are dying in Chechnya, the people who are dying in Yugoslavia, the people who are hungry in Africa, they are all supposed to be mithya. And what is reality? Brahman, the Satchidananda, that's the only reality. This is all a mithya. So the answer, there is no case dismissed. So philosophy has gone on dismissing cases either by negating God or by negating the world. There are other kinds of people who are a little more brave, and their answer is, look, there is a God, but he is doing his best. But whether ultimately good will succeed here or evil will succeed, partly would depend on human effort also. So we must do our little bit. So that is making God half a God. That is also, in other words, saying he is not a full God, he is only God the pretender. Now these are the various answers one could find from philosophies, either saying there is no God, either saying there is no suffering, there is no world, or saying, well, God is doing his best, and as you see, he succeeds most of the time, sometimes he is helpless. But Sri Aurobindo has a totally different answer to this question. And what is his answer? Of course, for a reasoned exposition of this answer, you have to go through several pages of the Life Divine. But the answer in brief is the following. A, evil is real. He doesn't say evil is unreal. Evil is real. B, it is not permanent. It is there. It is not permanent. It can be eliminated. And how does it come about? Why does it come about? It's an incidental circumstance that has to be there in the fuller manifestation of the divine reality, implicit here in ignorance. Now, if you take this last statement I made and analyze it step by step, you get the whole answer that Sri Aurobindo has given. He is not denying the presence of evil. He says evil exists, but evil is not a permanent feature of this world. Evil is not an inalienable feature of this world. Evil intervenes at a certain stage as an incidental circumstance in the progressive manifestation of the divine reality. And when the manifestation reaches a point, evil will automatically be eliminated. So it's not denying existence of evil, nor is it accepting it as a permanent feature, at the same time trying to tell us that we have to do something about it so that evil can be eliminated. Now, this is his reply, as I said, in the Life Divine, reasoned out in great detail. When the Life Divine came out in the American edition in the 50s, the Times Literary Supplement reviewed it in a very, very favorable review. Sri Aurobindo has yet to get an equally favorable review from any Indian newspaper of equal standing. The review that appeared in Times Literary Supplement was all praise for him, except one point. And the reviewer says, like all Indians, Sri Aurobindo doesn't take the problem of evil seriously. It simply means the reviewer was in a hurry and he must have skipped about 300 to 400 pages of the Life Divine. Because if anybody has honestly read the Life Divine, one could not have come to this conclusion. Now, as I said, there are many aspects to this question, many steps to this problem. The first answer many philosophers have given is on the basis of dualism. Plato gave this answer, being coming from non-being. And so there is always the presence of being and non-being in this world. Non-being is what creates evil, ignorance. There's a Sankhya talking about the Purusha and the Prakriti. The Purusha identifying itself with Prakriti, and out of that arise all the pain and suffering and evil. There are various versions of it. William James has something of that kind. I am not a philosopher, so I would generally like to simplify these things in terms of folk tales. And the dualistic viewpoint to me is best expressed, taken out of all the philosophical verbiage, by an African tribe which believes that God is essentially good and wants to do good. But what is the problem? He has an evil cousin. So God builds a beautiful world and the cousin comes and spoils it. And like our ministers, he can't get angry with our cousin. So the cousin spoils it, God goes back and again tries to improve on that world. By the time he has improved it, again the cousin comes and spoils it. So this keeps going on. This, of course, is one way of looking at the problem of evil. But this has not satisfied either the human aspiration or our notion of God. Most people wouldn't like to think of a God who shares his kingdom of this earth along with some other power. Call it evil, call it whatever, by whatever name. The other school of thought, which of course denies the existence of evil, there are very many ways. First of all, those who raise this problem, they say, how is it an irresponsible God? It must be an irresponsible God who creates this world and assigns to our life all this evil and pain and suffering. The idea is God is like an absentee landlord who sits in some heaven there, and he has a big, God is a big Baniya. Baniyas, may that tribe ever increase. I am a great admirer of Baniyas. Life can't go on without them. But they also make him a Baniya and say he sits there and enters your good deeds and bad deeds and decides to reward your good deeds always in material terms. Good deed must always have material benefits. Bad deeds must always have material punishment. Since when did God become such a great materialist that only reward he can think of is material reward, the only punishment he can think of is material punishment? Sri Aurobindo says in some letters, our demand from God are so many and so conflicting. God wouldn't know what to do with all these demands. He says, it's common sense. Most of us, when our behavior is moral and good, feel hurt if God does not reward us in material terms, if we don't get a better assignment, if we don't get a promotion. Look, I have been very honest, I have been non-corrupt, I have been very pure, but who recognizes my merit? Not even God. That you have studied physics very well. Because you have studied physics very well, it's reasonable to expect you will score high marks in physics. But our complaint is, because I have studied physics very well, I must get high marks in mathematics. Is that logical? Your exertion has been in the moral field, and therefore your reward will be in the moral field. You have less greed, you get a sound sleep, you have peace at heart, love comes to you much more naturally. The other chap who has not been leading a moral life, maybe he has built many castles, he has big accounts, but have you seen him tossing up and down in his bed, popping up blood pressure pills, going to doctors? You don't see all these things. So if your behavior is moral, if you are cultivating in the moral field, your rewards will be moral. Why do we expect God to reward all effort in material terms? This is the one basic mistake we make. Then we say, this is the mistake that we made. Number two, who tells you that God is like a landlord, absentee landlord, and sits in some other heaven and gives you punishments? This idea of a God is not an Indian idea of a God. The Indian idea of God is not like a potter making a pot. And so if you break the pot, if you bake the pot, if you sell it, whatever, the pot is outside the potter. In India, it's by becoming the world. So who is undergoing all the suffering? God himself. So you can't put moral blame on God anymore. So let us be very clear that there is no moral blame on God, which is otherwise God attracts, because we say God is outside this world, he has created this world and he sent suffering to this world. When we say God himself has become this world, we are all that God growing up, we are all that God suffering all the indignities, all the evil and everything that you find. It is God himself suffering it. The question should arise, why should God be so sadistic? Why should he inflict pain on himself? This is a question, reasonable question. Then Sri Aurobindo points out, are you really sure that there is a predominance of suffering and pain in this world? Or are we exaggerating the presence of pain and evil in this world? If pain is so predominant in this world, why is it that even when one is in the late 90s and the body has become a nest of all diseases imaginable, we still ask around, what about the latest laser treatment in America? Can it help me? Can it prolong my life by 6 months, by 8 months, by 1 year? This is not the question asked by people for whom life is all a tale of suffering. It's not the unhappy man who wants to commit suicide. Very often, it is the wealthy man who has more than he can spend who wants to commit suicide.